reflecting a lot today, and I really think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with our communities, not just internal work within our like Muslim community or Jewish community or Christian community, but on an interfaith level where all three of us can communicate with one another and actually talk to one another. I've been reflecting a lot about this today, and I'm not sure why. I think it's because of some of the conversations I've been having throughout the day. But I'm supposed to have a PhD meeting later today, and one of the supervisors that supervises my research project emailed me and said that she was no longer able to meet today, due obviously to the horrific massacre that happened yesterday at Bondi. Understandable, completely understandable. She's shaken up by it. And she actually pointed out in the email that her partner is actually very well involved in the Jewish community in Bondi in particular. And so for them, it hits closer to home, especially she also lives close to the area. So it makes sense that she would be directly impacted by these events. And I sent thoughts and prayers to her and her partner, and I wish them safety and security and well-being. But that conversation actually prompted me to think, when was the last time that I engaged with the Jewish community? And upon reflection and, looking through my photos, I like to document everything, so I'll have photos of something if it happened. I reflected back to 2016, almost 10 years ago, is the last time that I actually directly worked with the Jewish community in Bondi in particular. To set the scene for you guys, I was an undergrad at the Australian Catholic University at Sheffield, and I was part of the Sheffield Student Association. Now, usually and typically as a Catholic university, we had at the time at least that I can recall, we had an ongoing relationship with Father Chris Riley's Youth of the Streets, that organization. But it seemed like at that point we were trying to branch out and do more work in the community outside the Christian faith. And so I remember our president at the time reached out to Our Big Kitchen, which is a not-for-profit, I believe, organization in Bondi that actually houses like a massive industrial kitchen where volunteers can come in and actually make meals for, I believe it's homeless people, in particular in Bondi, like Jewish homeless people in Bondi. And I remember it was such an experience. It was such a beautiful experience that we actually went there for the day, and it was like a group of 15 of us, and we cooked all day, and then we packaged the food. And there was a rabbi as well there who actually gave us some beautiful words of encouragement. And he conversed openly with us. And, I think I was the only Muslim in the group, but there was a couple of Christians, a couple of atheists, a couple of people that were non-practicing Christians. So it was a very diverse group in terms of who we were as a group. And if I'm not mistaken, that was the last time I interacted with the Jewish community on such a scale. The Christian community, I've interacted a lot more with them. I think it's because there's a lot more of them here in our areas as well, like in the Arab areas. There's obviously a lot more Christians than there are Jews. And so there seems to be just the same way that you would find the mosque across the street or on any corner in the road, you would also find a church. So obviously their presence here is a lot more prevalent. And so our relationship with the Christian community is a lot better in my opinion, because we've fostered those relationships and we have grown those relationships intentionally and unintentionally. We've come together during events like any terrorist attack events, and then those relationships have grown. But I don't think there's a collective effort to work on these relationships together. I remember my dad had founded an interfaith dialogue with a few other Christian leaders, but this was back in 1999, maybe 2000, 2001. And I haven't heard of that interfaith dialogue since then. And I know there are obviously organizations in place that are supposed to do this work, but what I'm saying to you guys is that we're not doing it on a personal level. We're not doing it on a level where you and I just walk into the community and volunteer for a day or help out in community organization programs, or we go and share our expertise with these communities. We don't do that on a personal level. And unfortunately, when things like the Bondi massacre happens, there is a clear divide, and there is obviously hatred being spewed as well here and there. And so that divide becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. The dialogue starts with just one person. That conversation starts with just one person. And I really think that we've fallen off the bandwagon, and we've used COVID. Unfortunately, COVID had devastating impacts on our communities as well. Let's not deny that. But we've kind of scapegoated COVID a bit in terms of how far we've fallen off having these conversations and these dialogues with each other. And so I post this first and foremost to hold myself accountable, that I have not been doing enough. I have not been doing enough to mold the relationship between the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims as even just one person, because all it really needs is just one person to start that conversation. And that conversation can go places when open minds come together and conversations start rolling and happening. And I think our community, the Muslim community, in particular here in Sydney, I'll focus on Sydney right now, but in particular here in Sydney, we can do much better. We can really do much better in terms of how we come together with our fellow communities. And how we can support one another and how we can be with one another. At the end of the day, even in our religion, we refer to the Jews as our cousins from our dad's side. So we are deeply saddened by what has happened in the Jewish community. No life should ever be lost like that. And obviously my thoughts and prayers are with the 15 victims, the families of the 15 victims as well, and the 40 plus injured that are in hospital at the moment. And I just hope to God that we find some semblance of peace in our grieving.